Hello, Neil. This is for you. Day two of reading the Chronicles of the Kings of Norway by Snorri Sturluson. All right, so let's continue. Take six. Six of Ragnhild's dream. Ragnhild, who was wise and intelligent, dreamt great dreams. She dreamt, for one, that she was standing out in a herb garden, and she took a thorn out of a shift. But while she was holding the thorn in her hand, it grew so it became a great tree, one end which struck itself down into the earth and became firmly rooted, and the other end of the tree raised itself so high in the air that she could scarcely see over it, and it became also wonderfully thick. The under part of the tree was red with blood, but the stem upwards was beautifully green and the branches white as snow. There was many and great limbs to the tree, some high, others low down, and so vast were the tree's branches that they seemed to her to cover all Norway and even much more. 7. Of Halfdan's dream. King Halfdan never had dreams, which appeared to him an extraordinary circumstance, and he told it to a man called Torleif Spark the Wise, and asked him what his advice was about it. Torleif said that was what he himself did when he wanted to have any revelation by dream, was to take his sleep in a swine's tea, and then it never failed that he had dreams. The king did so, and the following dream was revealed to him. He thought he had a beautiful hair, which was all in his ringlets, some so long as to fall upon the ground, some reaching the middle of his leg, some to his knees, some to his loins, or the middle of his side, some his neck, and some were only as knots springing from his head. These ringlets were of various colors, but one ringlet surpassed all the others in beauty, luster, and size. This dream he told to Tolif, who interpreted it thus: there should be great prosperity from him, and his descendants shall rule over countries with great, but not all with equal great honor. But one of his race should be more celebrated than all the others. It was the opinion of people that his ringlet betokened King Olaf the Saint. King Halfdan was a wise man, a man of truth and uprightness, who made laws, observed them himself, and obliged others to observe them, and that violence should not come in place of the law. He himself fixed the number of criminal acts in law, and the compensation must mulcts, never seen this word before in my life, or penalties for each case, according to everyone's birth and dignity. So there's a footnote here, says the penalty, compensation, and man board for every injury, the party injured, or to his family, and to the next of kin if the injury was the death or premeditated under the. I'm reading from an EPUB, so it's a bit scrambled right now. I'm going to skip that footnote, it's scrambled. So I'm going to continue. For each case, according to everyone's birth and dignity. Queen Ragnhild gave birth to a son and was also poured over him, and the name of Harald given him, and he soon grew stout and remarkably handsome. As he grew up, he became very expert at all feats and showed also a good understanding. He was much beloved by his mother, but less so by his father. 8. Halfdan's meat vanishes at a feast. Ugh. King Halfdan was at a Yule feast in Heideland, where a wonderful thing happened one Yule evening. When the great number of guests assembled were going to sit down to table, all the meat and all the ale disappeared from the table. The king sat alone, very confused in mind. All the others set off, each to his home, in consternation that the king might come to some certainty about what occasioned this event. He ordered a fin, Fin, to be seized, who was particularly knowing, and tried to force him to disclose the truth. But however much he tortured the man, he got nothing out of him. The fiend sought help particularly from Harald, the king's son, and Harald begged for mercy for him, but in vain. Then Harald let him escape against the king's will and accompanied the man himself on the journey. Accompanied the man himself. On the journey, he came to a place where the man's chief had a great feast, and it appeared they were all received there. When they had been there until spring, the chief said, thy father took it much amiss that in winter I took some provisions from him. Now I will repay it to thee by a joyful piece of news. Thy father is dead, and now thou shalt return home and take possession of the whole kingdom which he had, and with it thou shalt lay the whole kingdom of Norway under thee. Halfdan's death. 9. Halfdan the Black was driving from a feast in Heideland, and it so happened that his road lay over the lake called Ran. It was in spring, and there was a great tow. They drove across the bight called Rakinskiv, Rykinsvik, where in winter there had been a great pond broken in the ice for cattle to drink, and where the dung had fallen upon the ice, the tow had eaten it into holes. Now, as the king drove over the ice broke, as the king drove over the ice broke, and King Halfdan and many with him perished. He was 40 years old. He had been one of the most fortunate kings in respect of good seasons. The people thought so much of him that when his death was known and his body was floated to Ringerike to bury it there, the people of most consequence from Ramarik, Fesfold, and Hedimark came to meet it. All desired to take the body with them to bury in their own district, and they thought that those who got it had good crops to expect. At least it was agreed to divide the body into four parts. The head was laid in a mound at Thyn in Ringarik, and each of the others took his part home and laid it in the mud. And this had since been called Halfdan's mound. Harald Hafaga's saga. I think it's like a chapter right now. Harald Hafaga's saga. We go again. 1. Harald's strife with Haik and his father Gandalf. Gandalf was but 10 years old when he succeeded his father, Halfdan the Black. He became a stout, strong, and comely man, and withal prudent and manly. His mother's brother, Guthrum, was leader of the herd, at the head of government, and commander Hertogi to the army. After Halfdan the Black's death, many chiefs coveted the dominion he had left. Among these King Gandalf was the first, then Hogni and Frod, sons of Eystein, king of Heidemark, and also Hogni Haruson from Ringerike, Haik, the son of Gandalf. began with an expedition of 300 men against Vesford, marched by the main road through some valleys, and expected to come suddenly upon King Harald, while his father Gandalf sat at home with his army and prepared to cross over the fjord, Fiord, cross over the fjord into Vesford. When Duke Guthrum heard of this, he gathered an army and marched up the country with King Harald against Hatch. They met in a valley in which they fought a great battle, and King Harald vast victorious, and there fell King Hatch and most of his people. The place has since been called Harkadale. Hope I pronounced it right. Then King Harald and Duke Guthrum turned back, but they found King Gandalf had come to Vesford. The two armies marched against each other and met and had a great battle, and it ended in King Gandalf flying after leaving most of his men dead on the spot. And in that state, he came back to his kingdom. Now, when the sons of King Eystein and Heidemark heard the news, they expected the war to come upon them, and they sent a message to Hogni, Carusen, and to Hess, Gudbrand, and appointed a meeting with them at Hingsaka in Heidemark. It's another footnote here. Let me attempt to read it. Endnote 1 from the very beginning. This is the endnote for Harald 1. The first 20 chapters of this saga after Harald's youth and his conquest of Norway. This portion of the saga is of great importance to the Icelanders, as the settlement of their isle was a result of Harald's war. The second part of the saga, chapter 21 to 46, treats of the dispute between Harald's son of Jarls of Orkney and of the Jarls of Moor. With the saga, we enter the domains of history. Long hyphen, capital ED. I have to find out what that is. I keep forgetting. 2. King Harald overcomes 5 kings. Ooh, there's going to be some battle here. After the battle, King Harald and Gotham turned back and went with all the men they came gathered through the forest towards Upland. They found where Upland's kings had appointed their meeting place and came there about the time of midnight, without the watchmen observing them until their army was laid before the door of the house in which Hog Carusen was, as well as that in which Gudbrand slept. They set fire to both houses, but King Einstein's 2 sons slipped out with their men and fought for a while, until both Hogni and Frod fell. After the fall of these 4 chiefs, King Harald, by his relation, Gotham's success and power, subdued Hegemark, Ringarig, Gudbrandsdal, Heideland, Tontin, Ramarich, and the whole northern part of Vingulmark. King Harald and Guthrum had thereafter war with King Gandalf and fought several battles with him, and in the last of them King Gandalf was slain, and King Harald took the whole of his kingdom as far as south of the river Ram, Raum, of Gaida, 3 of Gaida, daughter of Iri, Eirie. King Harald sent his son to a girl called Gaida, daughter of King Eirik of Hordaland, who was brought up as foster child in the house of a great born in Valdres. The king wanted her for his concubine, for she was a remarkably handsome girl, but of high spirit withal. But when the messengers came there and delivered their errands to the girl, she answered that she would not throw herself away even to the king of her husband, who had no greater kingdom to rule over than a few districts. And methinks, said she, And it's wonderful that no king in Norway will make the whole country subject to him in the same way as Gorm the Old did in Denmark or Eirik in Uppsala. The messenger thought her answer was dreadful haughty and asked what she thought would come of such an answer. For Harald was so mighty a man that his invitation was good enough for her. But although she had replied to their errand differently from what they wished, they saw no chance on this occasion of taking her with them against her will. So they prepared to return. When they were ready and the people followed them out, Gaida said to the messengers, now tell King Harald these my words. I will only agree to be his lawful wife upon the condition that he shall first, for my sake, subject to himself the whole of Norway, so that he may rule over that kingdom as freely and fully as King Eirik over the Swedish dominion, or King Gorm over Denmark. For only then, methink, can be called the king of a people. 4 is getting very interesting. 4. King Harald's vow. Now came the messenger to King Harald, bringing him the words of the girl, and saying she was so bold and foolish that she well deserved that the king should send a greater troop of people for her, and inflict on her some disgrace. Then answered the king, this girl has not spoken or done so much amiss that she should be punished, but rather she should be thanked for her words. She has reminded me, said he, of something which it appeared to me wonderful I did not think of before. And now, added he, I make the solemn vow and take God to witness, who made me and rules all over things, that never shall I clip or comb my hair until I've subdued the whole of Norway with cats and duties and domains, or if not, have died in the attempt. Gutam thanked the king warmly for his vow, adding that it was royal work to fulfill royal words. It's another footnote, end note. Scat, the word we mentioned earlier, S18, was a land tax paid to the king in money, malt, meal, or fresh meat from all lands, and was just adjudged by the to each king upon its accession and being proposed, accepted as king. Scrambled once again, I'm sorry. End footnote. 5. The battle in Orkadal, Orkldal. After these two relations gathered together a great force and prepared for an expedition to the uplands and upwards the valley of Gudbrandal and north over Govrefjord, Dovrefjeld. And when the king came down to the inhabited land, he ordered all the men to be killed and everything wide around to be delivered to the flame. And when the people came to know this, they fled everyone where he could, some down the country to Orkadale, some to Goladel, some to the forest, some begged for peace and obtained it on condition of joining the king and becoming his men. He met no opposition until he came to Orkadale. There a crowd of people had assembled, and he had his first battle with a king called Grinting. Herod won the victory, and King Grinting was made prisoner, and most of his people were killed. He took service himself under the king and swore fidelity to him. Thereafter, all the people of Orkadale district went under King Harald and became his men. 6. King Harald's law for land property. King Herod made this law over all the land he conquered, that all the Udal, Udal, that all the Uda property should belong to him, and that the bonds, that both great and small, should pay him land dues for his possession. Over every district he set an earl to judge according to the laws of the land and to justice, and also to collect the land dues and fines. And for each earl received a third part of the dues and services and fines for the support of his table and other expenses. Each earl had under him four or more herses, Herses, each of whom had an estate of 20 marks yearly income bestowed on him, and was bound to support 20 men at arms, and earl 60 men at their own expense. The king had increased their land dues and burden so much that each of his earls had greater power and income than the king had before. And when that became known to Trondjem, Chrondjem, many great men joined the king and took his service. Someone from Norway should kindly show me how to pronounce these words, where I have to be silent, where I have to put the words together. Right? 7. Battle in Gauladal. Gauladal. It is told that El Hakan Jotson, Jarjotgardson. I'll take that again. Jarjotgardson came to King Harad from Rajah, Yrjar, and brought a great crowd of men to his service. Then King Harad went to Gauladad and had a great battle, in which he slew two kings and conquered their dominions. And these were Goradal district and Strength district. He gave Haken Strength district to rule over as El. King Harad then proceeded to Joradal, Stjoradal, and had a third battle, in which he gained the victory and took that district as well. Thereupon Jongjem people assembled, and four kings met together with their troops. The one ruled over Baradel, the second over Skon, third the Sparbaja, Sparbygja district, and the fourth over Ehin Indirom. And this battle had great Enan district, Eyna district. These four kings marched with their men against King Harad, but he won the battle. And some of these kings fell, and some fled. In all, King Harad fought at least 8 battles and slew 8 kings in the Jondam district and laid the whole of it under him. 8. Harald says Normundal district, Naumudal. All right. North in Normundal were two brothers, kings, Helog and Rolog, Hrollaug, and they had been for 3 summers raising a mound or tomb of stone and lime and of wood. Just as the work was finished, the brothers got the news that King Harad was coming upon them with his army. Then King Helog had a great quantity of meat and drink brought into the mound, and went into it himself with 11 companions, and ordered that the mound be covered up. King Ronlod, on the contrary, went upon the summit of the mud on which were were wont to sit, and made a throne to be erected, upon which seated himself. Then he ordered feather birds to be laid upon the bench below, on which the earls were wont to be seated, and threw himself down from his high seat or throne into the earl's seat, giving himself the title of earl. Now Rolog went to meet King Harald, gave up to himself his whole kingdom, offered to enter into his service, and told him his whole proceedings. Then took King Harald a sword, fastened it to Rolog's belt, bound a shield to his neck, and made him thereupon an earl, and led him to his earl's seat, and therewith gave him the district Null Moldau, and set him an earl over it. AD 866. 1. End notes. Before writing was in general use, this symbolical way of performing all the important legal acts upon appears to be have entered into jurisprudence of all savage nations. And according to Gibbon, chapter 44, the jurisprudence of the first Romans were exhibited the scenes of a pantomime. Mime. The words were accepted to the gestures and to the slightest error of neglect in, in the forms of proceedings was sufficient to annul in the fairest claim. The pages are cut off, so I'm sorry, cut off, cut off, cut off. The EPUB didn't start coming well. We have to look for, I have to go back to Project Garten and see if I can get a PDF, because this scramble is 9. King Harald home affairs. This will be my last one for today. King Harald then returned to Trondheim, where he dwelt during the winter, and was afterwards called it his home. He fixed here his head residence, which he called Lade, Lade. This winter, he took a wife, Asa, a daughter of El Hakam John Gaston, who then stood in great favor and honor with the king. In spring, the king fitted out his ships. In winter, he had caused a great frigate, a dragon, to be built, and had it fitted out in the most splendid way, and brought his house troop and his berserk on board. The forecastle, the forecastle men were picked men, for they had the king's banner. From the stem to the mid hold was called Rasn, Rasn, or the fort defense, and there were the berserk. I think I know what a berserk is, one of the ship or something, if I'm not mistaken. Such men were only received into King Harald's house troop as were remarkable for strength, courage, and all kinds of dexterity, and they were alone got place, and they alone got place in his ship, for he had a good choice of house troops from the best of men of every district. King Harald had a great army, many large ships, many men of might followed him. Hornclough, in his poem called Glamdrapa, tells of this, and also that King Harald had a battle with the people of Orkadale at Updal Forest before he went upon this expedition. Oh, hear the bird brave the bowstring twang, while high in the air the arrow sang. The iron shower drives to flight the foeman from the bloody fight. The water of great Odin's shrine, the fair-haired son of Odin's line, raises the voice which gives the chirp, first in the track of wolves or bear. His master voice drives them along to hell our destiny, trembling tongue and knocks dove shape, with glazing sides, must fly to the wide ocean's tides, must fly before the king who leads Norse axemen on their ocean steeds. All right, see you in my next read. This R1, R2. Bye bye.